I'm thrilled as ever to have you joining us on another episode of the More People podcast. I'm your host today, Andrew Fitzmaurice, CEO at More People, joined by David Coop, Managing Director at Elsoms.
Thank you.
You've been at Elsoms for how long?
8 years, yeah. So, as you know, I went there because you helped me to establish myself at Elsoms. So I started there as the head of business development. So I went to help them with this great big long list of ideas and opportunities that they had that they didn't have the management resource to sort and deliver as big, delivered projects. So that was my job. It was to figure out which of all of those list of things that could be done, should be done, and do some of them.
Okay. And how did you get into this world in the first place? Go back a bit further.
I went to two universities. So I went and did a biology degree. And the reason I went to do a biology degree was because I loved gardening. I loved plants. And it was something I was also quite good at, science. And then I went to Bangor University and did a degree in biology. And at the end of that, I did okay. So I went to be a research associate, which was a PhD project at Lancaster University. It's a PhD I never finished. The science wasn't the bit that really pushed my button. It was explaining it to people and presenting the results. That was the bit that I really enjoyed. So I knew that I didn't want to go off into the world of research. And I went back to, what would get me up in the morning? What would be really exciting? And I thought, well, if I could get a job in gardening, that would be great. How on earth do you do that? How do you do that? Because I knew absolutely nobody in the world of gardening. I had no clue how to get into it. So I thought, well, I went into my mum and dad's shop, DIY shop, between Preston and Blackpool, and I picked up the most famous bottle of a gardening thing that there is, which is a bottle of Baby Bio. And on the back of it, it says, if you've got any questions or problems, call this number. So I called that number and I managed to blag my way to the HR officer and said, look, here's who I am, here's what I do. Basically, do you have a job? And I was so lucky because she said to me, and I can hear her words now, she said, well, as it happens, the person who was our gardening advisor has just today handed in their notice. Do you think that job would be interesting to you? I mean, if there ever was a more interesting job for me, I couldn't imagine what it would be. So I moved all the way from near Blackpool to the north of London to join a company called PBI, who were the people who made Baby Bio at that point. And I became the person who basically answered all the consumer queries, all the problems, all the complaints. And I literally walked in the office, the phone rang and they said, that's your job, you answer that phone. And I loved it. I loved every single second of it. Not long after I got there, Bayer bought the gardening business. And then I went along with that business and became the head of technical because I'd done all of this science in the background. And with Bayer, I had what I think is an amazing opportunity because I could go and live in the States. So I was a portfolio manager in the States. I kind of moved across to marketing at this point. And I got to the end of that point. I'd been with Bayer for then 13 years, decided I wanted to come back to the UK. I joined Westland. I did 7.5 years with Westland as their head of technical. And one of their most amazing, fantastic suppliers was a company called Elsoms. And when I wanted to then change, it was a really interesting company, a really interesting job. And like I said, 8 years ago, I changed and I'm really happy I did. I did all sorts of different jobs around there. So I was the director for R&D. I was the director for sales and marketing. So I swapped within that company, within Elsoms, in all sorts of different roles and functions so I could get a really good understanding.
As with lots of the clients we deal with at More People, they're often the unsung heroes because the man on the street doesn't know or think about the fact the carrot came from a grower, which came from a seed, which came from some varietal development, because they just buy a non-brand of carrot in a supermarket. So I think a lot of what goes on is unsung hero sort of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
a lot of products you're dealing with, but for context, the man on the street is consuming and experiencing things that start with Elsoms to a large degree.
I would say pretty much every day. Yeah, because there are, it is more than likely, if you're eating carrots, that you're eating the carrots that came from us, and the same with onions, and the same with beetroot, and the same with pretty much all those vegetables that you can imagine. So that's because of the strength of the portfolio, the strength of the range. And the fact that, we've been very successful with our partners in being really reliable partners, even through COVID, of providing really good, high quality seed year in, year out, which is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to get the right grade and the right performance, the right vigour, the right germination rates year after year after year. And in some of these cases, there's Carrot Nairobi, for example, which has been the number one in the market for about 30 years now. And doing that consistently year after year after year is extraordinarily difficult. So that's why, we really treasure the partnership that we have with Bija, because they have productions, multiple productions all around the world, backup productions, and that's all to make sure that we as farmers here in the UK can always access that amazing variety which perfectly fits our conditions, fits the specifications that are there in the top supermarkets, and reliably will grow whatever the weather throws at it.
Yeah, it's usually taken for granted that product quality, product consistency, availability is just not even thought about for most people. Is the Holy Grail now, much like the carrot variety, is part of the Holy Grail to find a new super strain, a new super variety of something that then becomes the next big thing? Yeah,
that would be great. It would be great if you only needed one variety of something and that would cover all bases. Life's just not that simple, because there are different end markets, there are different needs, and you might want an early vegetable, you might want a mid-season, you might want a late, and depending upon the characteristics of those varieties that you have there, you often need a range of different varieties which will produce those different types and different timings that you want. I mean, probably the best example is cauliflower, where you've got to have, tens of different varieties all successionally sown to be able to supply cauliflowers throughout the year, because the timing is so delicate with all of them. So yeah, we're always trying to make things more efficient, and if you have fewer and simpler things in your portfolio, that would make it more efficient. But of course, what we also want to do is make sure the growers have all the diversity that they need to produce the end result, the diversity of end results that they need, which might be, again, size, colour, shape, taste, you name it. All of those things turn into, for us, what are called breeding goals. So for a vegetable variety, the breeding goals are absolutely huge, because you've got a whole series of people between yourself and the end consumer, and not forgetting the end consumer. So not only do you have to make sure it tastes really good, it's got good bite, it's got good colour, you also got to make sure it stores well, that it'll pack really well, that it won't bleed. You've got to make sure that for the packer, it will perform really well. It won't brown very quickly, for example. And then, of course, for the grower, you've got a really good yield, but not just yield, marketable yield. And the difference between those is you don't want tons and tons and tons of carrots in a field, but actually 50% of them you throw away because they're the wrong shape. Yeah. You want as many as possible to be within the specification, so that all of those will pack out and then be saleable to the retailer. And that's, again, very difficult to do. You've got to carefully control the quality of the seed that you put in there, and you've got a whole series of different treatments that you can apply to that seed. So you might do priming, you might do pelleting, all sorts of different things that will allow the grower to get a more even and better result from the amazing variety that you provided in the first place.
And the amount of time this takes, years, and
Yep.
the number of iterations that you have to go through of things that go a certain distance and then are dead and defunct, and you go down a different channel.
It's huge.
The numbers are ridiculous.
Yep.
And the length of time it takes to get to that point from the concept. How long are we talking, and how many things are we talking about that don't?
Oh, well, I mean, every year we must, if you look at all the different varieties that just we breed in, every year we'll easily produce, I would say, 100,000 plus new individual varieties of plant. And then what we do as the skill of the breeder is to figure out from all of those, which is probably the one that is good enough to put in a field and test against what already exists in the market, and decide if it's actually good enough to be commercialised or not. So you might look at that as tremendous wastage, but actually that's the job. That's what plant breeders have done for a very long time. You're creating a lot of diversity. You're doing it with a goal in mind. You don't just create lots of plants and then see what comes out of it. You're doing it with a focus in mind. And there are lots of breeding techniques that allow you to focus in on what you're doing. But once you've got that diversity, the job then is to sift through it and find the magic within it. Try and find ways, assessment techniques, measurements, lab tests, whatever it takes to find the gold within the great big pile of all the different varieties that are there. And how long does it take? Actually, that depends upon the type of plant it is. One of the difficulties for us is that we work with a lot of what are called biennial plants. So those are the ones that grow in one year and then flower in the next. Well, if you think of parsnips, for example, to create a new parent line of parsnips will take you at least 7 generations of crossing them together to get something stable. Well, that means 14 years. 14 years of work. So there are other things that we've got to do to try and reduce that time as much as possible. So we do things like speed breeding, we do double haploid production, we do all sorts of amazing plant breeding techniques to shorten that time as much as possible. So it takes a long time, it takes a lot of money, it involves a lot of risk. You know, I've stood up at board meetings and proposed breeding programs, and of course with any new proposal, any investment proposal, you've got the upside and you've got the downside. And unfortunately for a breeding program, the downside might be that we'd spend millions and get nothing from it. It's entirely possible that we will never sell anything from that breeding program. And that's actually part of the beauty of being in a long-established, family-owned company, because the company, the directors of our business really understand that this is a long-term investment. You can't expect any return in 3 years on a breeding program. It's something that will take probably decades after that investment for you to get the return on that and to make sure that you can have a continuing and profitable business.
So from 100,000 to 1 that might make it to trial, and if trials was 10 to 1, you're 1,000,000 to 1, you're 14 years in, you're millions of pounds. Like you said, the appetite for risk and the understanding this is a long-term thing because the business has got the heritage. It still blows my mind that we can have this conversation and probably make this a 3-hour-long podcast on seeds. But it's fascinating.
It is a really fascinating world.
So much stuff there that people don't know about, which is why we do this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I do, I've done gardening talks because I love gardening, but I've done gardening talks ever since I was about 23. I think I did my first one. You can imagine as a 23-year-old stood in front of a gardening club. Well, they're all thinking, what's he doing here? That's a bit intimidating, and I've got a bit more used to it now, and the grey hair helps a little bit as well to build your reputation. But I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I love these days, of course, talking about seeds and growing from seeds and what does it take to breed new varieties. And you're absolutely right. You know, it's a complete mystery to most people. How do these new varieties come about? Lots of people think that they just magically appear one different in a field and you just take some seed of that and you grow some more of it. Absolutely not. It's a huge effort. It's a huge investment. It's a huge piece of work. And often when we do our own open days, or we might take people to Holland to look at Bijo's open days, that's one of the things that we're trying to get across. It's just look at what it takes to bring that really good quality seed year after year to you. It's a huge investment. It's a huge multi-year investment in quality to be able to deliver that result that we all want, which is some carrots on a plate. It's an enormous story behind it.
Bonkers. And we could talk about it all day, but we're going to wrap up at some point.
It's fine.
Absolute pleasure having you on, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.